Chapter 25. Finding Ruthie. Back in June 1993, during the course of putting together Mommy's will, something I had to force her to do, the macabre subject of her burial came up. "When I die," she said, "don't bury me in New Jersey. Who wants to be buried in Jersey?" She spoke these words as she was sitting in the kitchen of the home she shares with my sister Kathy in Ewing Township near Trenton, a lovely area of New Jersey. I said, "We'll bury you in Virginia, next to your second husband." "Oh no, don't bury me in Virginia. I ran away from Virginia. I don't want to go back there." "How about North Carolina? We'll bury you where your first husband is." "No way. I spent all my life running from the South. Don't put me in the South." "Okay, New York," I said. "You lived there 40 years. You still love New York." "Too crowded," she sniffed. "They bury them 3 deep in New York. I don't want to be smushed up under somebody when I'm buried." "Where should we bury you then?" She threw up her hands. "Who cares? This is nonsense. I've got nothing to leave y'all anyway except some bills." She got up from the kitchen table, bristling, and snapped. "Bury me here, bury me there. What are you trying to do, kill me? I don't want no tubes in me, whatever you do. A doctor will kill you faster than anything." She reached for the sun visor. "Your sister did this to me," she said. "Did what?" "I had a little bump on my face, and she made me see this fancy doctor. Now I gotta wear this dumb hat all the time. It makes me look like a rooster." Doctors found squamous cell cancer in a small mole they removed from Ma's face, a condition caused by too much exposure to the sun. Ironically, it's a condition that affects mostly white people. To the very end, Mommy is a flying compilation of competing interests and conflicts, a black woman in white skin with black children and a white woman's physical problem. Fortunately, the doctors got the mole off in time, but the question of her own mortality is one she seems to be preoccupied with of late, probably because she knows death is the one condition in life she can't outrun. "Death is strange, isn't it?" she wonders. "It's so final. You know time is not promised," she says, wagging a finger. "That's why you better get to know Jesus." If it takes as long to know Jesus as it took to know you, I think, I'm in trouble. It took many years to find out who she was, partly because I never knew who I was. It wasn't so much a question of searching for myself as it was my own decision not to look. As a boy, I was confused about issues of race, but did not consider myself deprived or unhappy. As a young man, I had no time or money or inclination to look beyond my own poverty to discover what identity was. Once I got out of high school and found that I wasn't in jail, I thought I was in the clear. Oberlin College was gravy. All you could eat and no one telling you what to do, and your own job to boot if you wanted one. Yet I laughed bitterly at the white kids in ragged jeans who frolicked on the campus lawn, tossing frisbees, and went about campus caroling in German at Christmas. They seemed free in ways I could not be. Most of my friends and the women I dated were black, yet as time passed, I developed relationships with white students as well, 2 of whom, Leander Bean and Lori Weissman, are close friends of mine today. During the rare, inopportune moments when I found myself squeezed between black and white, I fled to the black side, just as my mother had done, and did not emerge unless driven out by smoke and fire. Being mixed is like that tingling feeling you have in your nose just before you sneeze. You're waiting for it to happen, but it never does. Given my black face and upbringing, it was easy for me to flee into the anonymity of blackness. Yet I felt frustrated to live in a world that considers the color of your face an immediate political statement whether you like it or not. It took years before I began to accept the fact that the nebulous white man's world wasn't as free as it looked, that class, luck, religion all factored in as well, that many white individuals' problems surpassed my own, often by a lot, that all Jews are not like my grandfather, and that part of me is Jewish too. Yet the color boundary in my mind was the greatest hurdle. In order to clear it, my solution was to stay away from it and fly solo. I ran for as long as I could. After I graduated from Oberlin College in 1979 and received my master's degree in journalism from Columbia University in 1980, I began a process of vacillating between music and writing that would take 8 years to complete before I realized I could work successfully as a writer and musician. I quit every journalism job I ever had. I worked at the Wilmington News Journal and quit. The Boston Globe, quit. People magazine, Us magazine, the Washington Post, quit them all. This was before the age of 30. I must have had some modicum of talent because I kept getting hired, but I wore my shirt and tie like an imposter. I wandered around the cities by day, stumbling into the newsroom at night, exhausted to write my stories. I loved an empty city room, just the blinking terminals and a few deed bags like myself. It was the only time I could write, away from white reporters, black reporters, away from the synergy of black and white that was already simmering inside my soul, ready to burst out at the most inopportune moments. Being caught between black and white as a working adult was far more unpleasant than when I was a college student. I watched as the worlds of blacks and whites smashed together in newsrooms and threw off chunks of human carnage that landed at my feet. I'd hear black reporters speaking angrily about a sympathetic white editor, and I'd disagree in silence. White men ruled the kingdom, sometimes ruthlessly, finding clever ways to gut the careers of fine black reporters who came into the business full of piss and vinegar. Yet other white men were mere pawns like myself. Most of my immediate editors were white women, whom I found in general to be the most compassionate, humane, and often brightest in the newsroom. Yet they rarely rose to the top, even when compared to their more conservative black male counterparts, some of whom marched around the newsrooms as if they were the second coming of Martin Luther King, wielding their race like baseball bats. They were no closer to the black man in the ghetto than their white counterparts. They spoke of their days of growing up in Mississippi or wherever it was as proof of their knowledge of poverty and blackness. But in fact, the closest most of them had come to an urban ghetto in 20 years was from behind the wheel of a locked Honda. Their claims of growing up poor were without merit in my mind. They grew up privileged, not deprived, because they had mothers, fathers, grandparents, neighbors, church, family, a system that protected, sheltered, and raised them. They did not grow up like the children of the 80s and 90s, stripped of any semblance of family other than the constant presence of drugs and violence. Their "I was raised with nothing and went to Harvard anyway" experience was the criterion that white editors used to hire them, but then again, that was partly how I got through too. The whole business made me want to scream. I had no true personal life in those years, few dates, few dinners, no power lunches. My college sweetheart, a mixed-race woman from Hyde Park, Chicago, her mother was black and her father Jewish, was the apple of my eye. But I was afraid of commitment then, afraid to have children because I didn't want them to be like me. I drifted away from her and let time and distance do the rest. Since I had no personal life outside of journalism other than music, I soared as a reporter. But I always parachuted out in the end, telling my white editors after a year or two that I had to leave to find myself, write a book, play my sax, whatever the excuse was. Most black folks considered finding myself a luxury. White people seemed to think of it as a necessity, most white people, that is, except for that all-important one. Each time I quit a job, Mommy would do a war dance, complete with chants and dancing, usually beginning with, "Now what are you gonna do? You had a second chance and you threw it out the window. You need a job." Like most mothers, she wielded tremendous power, and my staunch resolve would crumble like a sandcastle before her frontal assaults, which were like tidal waves. I'd stave her off and back out of her house, saying, "Don't worry, Ma, don't worry," disappearing into the underworld labyrinth of the New York music scene for months, playing sax with this or that band, selling a piece of music here and there. I was always moderately successful, and later in life much more so, winning the Stephen Sondheim Award for Musical Theater Composition, working with Anita Baker, Grover Washington Jr., Jimmy Scott, Rachelle Farrell, and many others. But the 80s were hard times for me as a composer. And each time I hit a dry, I'd scurry back into journalism until February 1988, when I was working for the Washington Post's style section and thinking of quitting to go back to music in New York. The Post's style section is the top of the line, the elite, the haute cuisine, the green grass of heaven for newspaper feature writers, and quitting there is not something you do lightly, not even for a seasoned quitter like me. As I pondered it, Ma called me out of the blue, smelling trouble. "I know you," she snapped. "You're getting steady money now, and a lot of it. Don't quit that job." But I did quit, partly because I got tired of running, and partly because the little ache I had known as a boy was no longer a little ache when I reached 30. It was a giant, roaring musical riff, screaming through my soul like a distorted rock guitar with the sound turned all the way up, telling me, get on with your life, play sax, write books, compose music, do something, express yourself. Who the hell are you anyway? There were two worlds bursting inside me trying to get out. I had to find out more about who I was, and in order to find out who I was, I had to find out who my mother was. It was a devastating realization, coming to grips with the fact that all your life you had never really known the person you loved the most. Even as a young boy, I was used to mommy hiding her past, and I grew to accept it, and the details of her past got lost as my own life moved forward, which is probably how she wanted it anyway. I never even seriously broached the subject with her until 1977, when I was in college and had to fill out a form that for some reason or I expected to sit down with her and conduct long, rambling interviews, listening intently as the painful, fascinating details of her life came tumbling out. I envisioned her as the wise sage, sitting in a rocking chair, impassively pouring the moving details of her life into my waiting tape recorder over 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, me prodding her along, her cooperating, cringing, inching along, mother and son, hand in hand, fighting forward, emotionally wrought, until, behold, we'd be done 6 months later and the world would be graced with our mighty tome. 8 years later, I was still getting this. Mind your own business. If you think too hard, your mind dries up like a prune. I don't want a TV special named after me. Leave me alone. You're a nosy body. I'm moving out of Philly. Let's pack up the house. My mother is the only individual I have ever known who has been in the process of moving for 10 years straight. After living in Delaware for only a year, she bought a small row house in Germantown, Philadelphia in 1975, settled in, and promptly began the process of looking for another place to move that literally became a lifestyle. She seemed to know every realtor in Germantown on a first-name basis. She would rise in the morning, scoot out the door, and ride around with a realtor all day, looking at houses which she had neither the money for nor the desire to buy, telling the poor realtor after the day was done to call me in a week. She'd then clear out of town completely, moving to Atlanta for 3 weeks to stay with my siblings, or just disappear from sight, never to be seen by the realtor again. The poor guy would call, and one of us would finally break the news to him that mommy wasn't interested. Sometimes, mommy would be standing by the phone, whispering to us in one ear while we were running interference for her with the other. "Tell him I'm not here," she'd hiss. "Why does he keep bothering me?" It was typical mommy neurotic behavior, and I didn't fully understand it till I learned how far she had truly come. For her Jewish side is gone. She opened the door for me, but closed it for herself long ago, and for her to crack it open and peek inside was like eating fire. She'd look in and stagger back, blinded as the facts of her own history poured over her like lava. As she revealed the facts of her life, I felt helpless, like I was watching her die and be reborn again. Yet there was a cleansing element too, because after years of hiding, she opened up and began to talk about the past, and as she did so, I was the one who wanted to run for cover. I can't describe what a shock it was to hear words like Tata and Rav and Shiva and Booba coming from mommy's mouth as she sat at the kitchen table in her Ewing home. Imagine, if you will, 5,000 years of Jewish history landing in your lap in the space of months. It sent me tumbling through my own abyss of sorts, trying to salvage what I could of my feelings and emotions, which would be scattered to the winds as she talked. It was a fascinating lesson in life history, a truth is stranger than fiction marvel, to say the least. I felt like a Tinker Toy kid building my own self out of one of those toy building sets. For as she laid her life before me, I reassembled the tableau of her life, working like a puzzle, and as I did, so my own life was rebuilt. Mommy has changed from the time she adopted Christianity back in the 1940s. What's different is that she can face the past now. After years of saying, "Don't tell my business," she reached a point where she now says, "It doesn't matter, they're all dead now, or in Florida," which in her mind is the same as being dead. "I'll never retire to Florida," she vowed. Riding past a graveyard one day, she looked over and remarked, "That's Florida forever." Ma settled in to get her college degree in social work from Temple University at age 65. She enjoyed the intellectual back and forth, the study, reading different authors. I'd forgotten how bright she was. The constant learning and yearning for knowledge was what helped her finally move away from the bustle of Philadelphia to settle into the quieter, safer suburb of Ewing with my sister Kathy. For a few years, she used her degree to work as a volunteer in a social service agency that helped pregnant, unwed mothers. Then she moved on to run a weekly reading group for literate and illiterate seniors at the local library, which she still does today. But that's not enough to keep her busy. Every day she rises, spirits her 2 grandchildren off to school, and rides around central New Jersey, haggling with merchants at flea markets, taking yoga classes in sweats and Nikes, tooling along in a 1995 Toyota at 27 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, holding up traffic on Route 1, listening to Bernard Meltzer on WORAM or The Howard Stern Show. Grandma laughs when Howard Stern trucks dirty, my niece Maya whispers. Sometimes she'll get up in the morning and disappear for days at a time, slipping away to her old stomping grounds, the Red Hook housing projects, to go to church and see her old friends there. She loves Red Hook. Despite the fact that my siblings often urge her to stay out of the projects, she won't. "Don't tell me how to live," she says. She's always been slightly out of control, my mother, always had the unnerving habit of taking the ship into the air to do loops and spins, then fleeing the cockpit screaming, "Someone do something, we're going to crash," then at the last dying second, slipping into the pilot seat and coolly landing the thing herself, only to forget the entire incident instantly, without any remorse. She'd wipe her memory instantly and with purpose. It's a way of preserving herself. That's how she moves. Her survival instincts are incredible. Her dances with fire are always fun to watch. Ruthie, my sisters affectionately called her. Ruthie's crazy. In August 1993, after more than 50 years, Ruthie, aka Ruth McBride Jordan, aka Rachel Deborah Shilsky, finally faced the ghosts of her past. She went home to Suffolk, Virginia with me, my sister Judy, a New York schoolteacher, and my brother Billy, an Atlanta physician, in tow. We drove through the entire town, down Main Street, past the one building in town that had an elevator back in the 30s, past the spot where her old home had been, past the old synagogue and old high school, which were still there. "Nothing's changed," she breathed as we sat in front of the old synagogue, still white, aged, but slightly noble with its 4 tall columns. Ma stared at the old temple but refused to get out of the car. She merely looked out the window. "They sure do take care of it," she murmured, then ordered Billy, who was driving, to pull away. She seemed immobile, attentive, reflective but unmoved, until we pulled into the Portsmouth driveway of one Francis Moody, now Francis Falcone, whom I found after a long search. It took 12 years and a ton of good luck for me to find the mysterious Francis. It was, after all, 50 years since Mommy had been there, and most of the old-timers had gone. Those that remained did not remember or know anyone named Francis. Finally, I came across a woman named Frances Holland, who told me about 2 girls who befriended her when she was a new student in the 7th grade at Thomas Jefferson Junior High, Ruth Shilsky and Frances Moody. "Frances Moody's alive, living in Portsmouth somewhere," she said. A search through the directory turned up nothing, and I was empty-handed until I visited the town library in Suffolk, and a librarian handed me a slip of paper with a phone number on it. "This is the woman you're looking for," she said. "She's Frances Falcone now." I thanked her and asked her how she knew. She shrugged. She didn't seem to be friendly or unfriendly, just matter-of-fact. She picked up the phone, dialed a number, and handed me the phone. Frances Moody, now Frances Falcone, was on the other line. "I've been looking for you for years," I said. She laughed. "Come see me, but I might not be able to see you," she said. "I had an operation on my eyes yesterday for cataracts." Right away, I drove to Portsmouth and met my mother's childhood friend, a slim, brown-haired, soft-spoken woman of Mommy's age, whose eyes, it turned out, were working just fine. It seems fitting that Frances Moody, who crossed the line and made a Jewish friend in the 1940s when Jews were unpopular in Suffolk, had married an Italian, Nick Falcone, a wood artisan. "The last time I saw your mother, she gave me a shower for my wedding," Frances said. "That was in 1941. "I bet you thought you'd never see her again," I said. "No," she said. "I knew I'd see her again somehow." As we neared Frances's house in Portsmouth, Mommy began to get nervous and to talk excessively. "Look at these roads," she said. "Not a bump, not a notch. They fix 'em down here in Virginia, but you shouldn't speed on them because the cops here don't play. They don't play, you hear me? Billy, slow down. Oh, my knees hurt. The air conditioning really bothers my knees, and these seats are too small." Even after we pulled into the driveway of Frances's house and her friend approached, she was babbling away, complaining now. "Oh, I can't get up now. My legs hurt. Help me get up. What the heck are y'all trying to do anyway? Driving so fast like that. You can't drive like that in Virginia, I tell you. Now my knees hurt, and Frances, look at how thin you are. Oh, you're so pretty. Oh boy, what are y'all trying to do?" And she wept as she hugged her friend. After the trip, she and Frances picked up where their high school friendship left off and remain close today. But Frances is as far back as Ruthie can go. Her reunion with her old friend is one of the small, beautiful side benefits of a book experience that Mommy was truly never interested in, exploring a past for her that in many ways is gone forever and is better left buried and untouched. There are probably 100 reasons why Ruthie should have stayed on the Jewish side instead of taking New Jersey Transit and the F train to go to a Christian church in Red Hook, Brooklyn, with her Schwartzy children and friends, and I'm sure the Old Testament lists them all. But I'm glad she came over to the African American side. She married 2 extraordinary men and raised 12 very creative and talented children, and I ought to list their names now. After all, that was part of the deal on my end, and her children's achievements are her life's work anyway. So, from the eldest to the youngest: Andrew Dennis McBride, B.A., Lincoln University; M.D., University of Pennsylvania Medical School; M.A., Public Health, Yale University; Director of Health Department, City of Stamford, Connecticut; Rosetta McBride, B.A., Howard University; MSW, Social Work, Hunter College; Staff Psychologist, New York City Board of Education; William McBride, B.A., Lincoln University; M.D., Yale University School of Medicine; M.B.A., Emory University School of Business; Columbia University; Medical Director, Southeast Region Medical and Scientific Affairs, Merck & Co., Inc.; David McBride, B.A., Denison University; M.A., History, Columbia University; Ph.D., History, Columbia University; Chairman of African American History Department, Pennsylvania State University; Helen McBride Richter, R.N., Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania; GONBP, Emory University School of Medicine, graduate student in nurse midwifery, Emory University School of Nursing; Richard McBride, U.S. Army veteran, B.A., Cheney University, Chemistry; M.S., Drexel University, Associate Professor of Chemistry, Cheney State, Chemistry Research Associate, AT&T; Dorothy McBride Wesley, A.A., Pierce Junior College, B.A., LaSalle University, Medical Practice Office Manager, Atlanta, Georgia; James McBride, B.A., Oberlin College, MSJ, Journalism, Columbia University, composer, saxophonist; Kathy Jordan, B.A., Syracuse University, M.S., Education, Long Island University, special education teacher, Ewing High School, Ewing, New Jersey; Judy Jordan, B.A., Adelphi University, M.A., Columbia Teachers College, teacher, JHS 168, Manhattan; Hunter Jordan, B.S., Computer Engineering, Syracuse University, computer consultant, U.S. Trust Corporation, Ann Taylor; Henry Jordan, Jr. at North Carolina A&T University, Customer Service and Purchasing, Neal Manufacturing, Inc., Greensboro, North Carolina. Ruth Jordan, B.A., Temple University, 1986. Mommy's children are extraordinary people, most of them leaders in their own right. All of them have toted more mental baggage and dealt with more hardship than they care to remember, yet they carry themselves with a giant measure of dignity, humility, and humor. Like any family, we have problems, but we have always been close. Through marriage, adoptions, love-ins, live-ins, and shack-ups, the original dozen has expanded into dozens and dozens more. Wives, husbands, children, grandchildren, cousins, nieces, nephews, ranging from dark-skinned to light-skinned, from black kinky hair to blonde hair and blue eyes. In running from her past, she has created her own nation, a rainbow coalition that descends on her house every Christmas and Thanksgiving and sleeps everywhere, on the floor, on rugs, in shifts, sleeping double, triple to a bed, 2 up, 3 down, just like old times. Every year we argue over where to have Christmas. Every year we spend hundreds of dollars on phone calls and letters, writing, faxing, cajoling, and bribing, trying to get out of the pilgrimage to Ma's tiny house in Ewing. Every year, all 12 of us claim we're going to have Christmas at our own house, and we're not going to travel a zillion miles with a zillion children to sleep with a zillion people on the floor of Ma's like we're little kids, because we're just tired, man, and we did this last year. But at age 74, the president, CEO, and commander-in-chief of this here army still has the power. My wife Stephanie tells a funny story about the first time she came home with me for Christmas and met my family. We were sitting around Ma's house in Ewing, all 12 siblings, doctors, professors, all. The house as wild as it always was when we were little, our kids going crazy and our spouses numb, while Mommy's original dozen fell back into nutty behavioral patterns that would make a psychologist throw up his hands in despair, when someone shouted over the din, "Let's go to the movies." Instantly, the room sprang into overdrive. "Good idea. Yeah, let's go. I'll drive." From another room, "Wait for me. Hurry up. Where's my shoes?" Mommy was sitting on the living room sofa while all this was happening, her feet resting on the coffee table. She yawned and said softly, "I want to eat." The movie instantly was forgotten. "Yeah, let's eat. I sure am hungry. Let's order out." From another room, "I've been waiting to eat all day." Now that's what you call power.